Community News. This is the Andy Korge Show on what's going to be a chilly day here in South Florida. I'm here with my good friend David Winker. Thanks for joining us here at the Hub for local news and information in South Florida, Miami Community News.
I love how you say, I love the shout out to the Miller brothers, Miami Community News. Here we are.
Well, it's interesting because David Winker, the newspaper business is dying throughout America. We all know. We saw the Miami Herald went bankrupt.
And these guys are thriving.
They're thriving. And I think the reason for that is they're so local here at Miami Community News. If you live in Coral Gables or Palmetto Bay or South Miami or anywhere you possibly live, there's news that's very tailored towards your little community. And I think that's what makes them thrive here at Miami Community News.
I think it's interesting because I've always been a junkie. I'm sharing on. I'm not being rude. I'm sharing on Facebook Live. Please send in comments and questions. Everything from Grant Miller, eating a hot dog, to covering local politics, zonings, lot splits, and things that just are not being covered by other news outlets. Like, it's an interesting thing. Everyone's focused on content. We're seeing it on local radio. There's less and less local shows. They're trying to jam these national, the other day yesterday, I'm in my office. I always listen to sports radio all day. And there was a moment where 560 was playing. I don't know who it was.
Syndicated.
A syndicated show.
Right.
Another one was the Jim Rome show. And I'm a sports junkie. I have no interest in listening to those national shows.
Right.
I just don't I want my local sports teams. And I think that is the same thing with these. If you live in South Miami, your local news is at community newspapers. It's not at the Herald. It's not at Channel 10. They're just not covering the stuff. So it is interesting.
Right. And we're going to talk a little local sports here today, but also let's get started with something not local, but local nonetheless.
That has local impact.
It really does. And this is the latest relief coming from the Congress on COVID. And
Andy, what are you going to do with your $600?
Yeah, it's funny because it's funny you mentioned that, because I was on a conference call headed by or part of it was the Project on Government Oversight. And it was a conference call, and Donna Shalala, a former U.S. congressperson, was on the call. This was last week on Tuesday, a week ago today. And Donna Shalala, believe it or not, is still in the U.S. Congress. She is one of two private citizens serving on the Congressional Oversight Committee for the relief package that just came out. The CARES, I guess this would be CARES Act 2 maybe, or whatever they're calling it now. And one of my comments on that call was that I got a check in the mail for $1,200, and I really didn't need the $1,200. I thought the $1,200 could be better suited for other people that maybe needed it more than I did at that point in time. Not to say that my business has done well. To the contrary, has done non-well since COVID, being in the tourism business. But I really felt like what I didn't understand about this relief, and what is the urgency to send everybody $600 if people are working. And I understand you have to have earned under $75,000 to get it. But if that person who's, let's say, is making 60 or 65 or 50,000 or whatever it is still working, why are we sending that person a check? It doesn't make sense to me. So I wonder what your opinion of that is.
I look at it a couple ways. One, I think people do need the money. I think that people were asked not to work. The economy was shut down for healthcare, for the greater good. And I think we have a responsibility. If it was up to me, I'd give everyone, a couple $1,000. Because I also look at it as it helps the economy. That money's going to get spent, right? I mean, it's not, you or I get, our $1,200 checks. I mean, I put it in the stock market, right? I just took the money, put it in the stock market. That's not what should be happening.
Of course.
Is that good? I guess it's good for the stock market. But when you give people that money's going to be put out in the street, right? And it's funny because people are saying like, what, people buying marijuana, people buying drugs, people, but who cares? It's money on the street. Like, I think it helps the local economy just to get things moving. So I don't see it as wasteful. It's almost like if we give all that PPP money to all these corporations, I'm not sure you're not better off just giving that money and just because it's going to be on the street. You give that money to people of lesser means, they're spending it on groceries, they're spending it on Christmas gifts. That's all good. Like, I guess I look at it a little bit more of like a supply side economics thing. It almost like just pays for itself. I think the 600, it will be interesting to see what the 600 does. It's kind of like in relationships, when you do something, like if it's so paltry, it almost is counterproductive, right? A politician asks you for a donation and you give $25, like maybe you're better off not giving anything. Right?
right. Yeah.
And it made me think, it's funny because actually I tweeted out that I was coming on your show today, and someone wrote in, I thought it was interesting. They're like, "Are you a lobbyist? Is Andy Korge a lobbyist? Are you a lobbyist?" And I laughed because I was like, no, like what's the opposite of a lobbyist, right? Like
that's me.
We're fighting the lobbyist.
Exactly.
But it made me think of just like that question and like what's going on in the world, like that someone would think that we're lobbyists, right? I thought it was interesting. And it just goes to this idea of like, how is our decision? I don't know if they were just suspicious that we were on the radio. Like, why are we here doing this? And it just kind of like led to this overall thing of like everything that's happening in the country right now. Like, if you're not doing well, if you're facing eviction and you get that $600, like I saw a tweet and the tweet said, don't give poor people a hard time for buying the PS5. It's like they're poor and now they're going to be poor with a PS5. At least they have a PS5.
Right.
And that's a little bit kind of my attitude with the $600. Like, does the $600, kind of go full circle back to you? Like, what does the $600 really help with?
Well, my thinking on it was, could that money be better allocated towards the people that are unemployed, that are not working?
Just hyper focus on who's the most.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that the 300, to recap a little bit, the CARES Act or the new relief bill will provide $300 a week in federal unemployment for people that are unemployed. And really, those are the people suffering the worst. If you work for a cruise line, you might, in all likelihood, you probably got let go, either furloughed or permanently let go. So, I mean, don't those people need it more? In certain states, state unemployment is a lot more than in Florida. But here in Florida, our state unemployment is just $225 a week. That's not a lot of money. So you combine that with the 300s, $500 a week, $525 a week. I guess some people who are on unemployment could maybe afford that, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that can't, that's not enough. And so I just felt like maybe that $600, instead of just blanket throwing that money out to everyone that makes under $75,000 in America, that money might have been better served to be allocated towards people that were genuinely unemployed.
It's interesting you say that because our friend Romy, that we've had in before, who is a reporter at USA Today for, I'd encourage everyone to check it out. It's an article about minority landlords and how they're taking it on the chin here. They have these properties, especially here in South Florida. They're not getting rent, right? And how they're dealing with it and how they're not getting the help, and they didn't get the PPP money and stuff like that. So it's interesting that you bring it up because there is this problem of, I was talking to a guy who's the head of an accounting firm here in Miami. And I was like, well, what's going to happen in June, August? Is this economy going to crank up? And he agreed with me that the economy is going to crank up, right? Barring some setback or this super strain out of England or whatever, like barring something, we should be over this. We should be back to normal pretty soon. But he said, like, there's really winners and losers. Like we've really had, and that's kind of, I think, the story here. There's winners and losers. And one of the unfortunate things that he pointed out was the winners are big box retailers. The losers are mom and pop and the mom and pop businesses. Now, I think that there's the barriers to entry to opening up a coffee shop, to opening up a bar are low. And so, and there's a lot of empty space. So maybe landlords would be willing to work, but that's the kind of thing that I think of is like, let's have that money so we can fill those gaps, not so much to help people. I mean, I hate to be cold about it, but it's like, let's help people who are going to help the economy. Let's help that restaurant reopen because it's going to employ a bunch of people and get moving. So I think that's maybe where I'm focused on. And it's interesting because all this ties back, Andy, to what's going to happen with this. What's going to happen with this Georgia race? Like it all turns on these two Senate races.
Right? But before we talk about that, so in the bill, there's $284 billion for PPP for businesses. Now, in talking, we had here on the Andy Korge Show at Miami Community News yesterday, right? It was yesterday, Tommy. We had Danielle Bryan, who is the executive director of the Project on Government Oversight. And we heard some of the war stories about the first round of PPP, how poorly conceived it was at the beginning. I mean, to introduce it and say, okay, you have 8 weeks to spend this money was just stupid. I don't understand what they were thinking with that in Congress. The issue with the banks they had out the gate, how the banks treated their big customers. I was one that I was the little customer who applied immediately. And then the day the money was gone, got this sort of, just blanket email from Chase telling me that, oh, we're reviewing your application. Well, thanks. I gave it to you on the first day. But they put me in the pile of the not so significant, customers, and the pile with the significant customers were the ones that they targeted. And that is not what the PPP was meant for.
Classic thing of like, if you can qualify for a loan, you don't need a loan, right? They always say that. And the PPP kind of shook out like that. Like my clients and my friends that got the loans, like you and I didn't get the loans. Tommy didn't get a loan. Like the Miller brothers didn't get a loan. Like we didn't get it. The people who had significant banking relationships were able to get
out the gate.
But they're the ones that really didn't need the money, right?
Exactly.
They're the guys that it's I hate to say it, but they're the guys that are buying the big boats. And I mean, I have those clients, like they did really well through that process.
Yeah, I mean, you heard about and just let me say hi to George Gonzalez watching in now.
George.
Julie Cooper, my good friend Julie Cooper. We're pushing Julie. Thanks for watching. You read.
Hi.
You read about Fisher Island getting approved for the HOA at Fisher Island. Come on, give me a break, right? The Los Angeles Lakers NBA basketball team.
There was a big article in the paper about the law firms got it. The big law firms got it. It's today in Daily Business Review. The big law firms got it, and then the individual partners got it. Because we all operate under our own PAs. So you not only like everyone was just. And it's just a wash of money. And everyone wonders why the stock market's doing well is that redistribution of wealth of just printing that money and giving it to that. And that's why we're seeing high-end home sales are up,
right.
Boat sales are up. So,
here's what was interesting in that call that I was on with Congressional Oversight Committee member Donna Shalala and other small businesses from throughout the country. And as I said before, the Project on Government Oversight people was that in the first round there was very little oversight. We read stories of people that got money and bought Ferraris. One guy right here in Fort Lauderdale that was busted for buying luxury cars and boats with the money he got from the PPP. And one of the things that came out of that was it really, and former Congresswoman Shalala communicated, she thought that the biggest mistake they made going out was putting this in the hands of the SBA. That was the mistake, that it could have been much simpler done. And that was by giving it to the IRS that has all our tax returns and knows exactly what everyone made. So these people are fudging tax returns or fudging, how much they're making, et cetera, in order to get some of this relief for their companies. In this round, 284, as I said, 284 billion and 25 billion in rental assistance. That's the other thing. The moratorium on evictions was to expire at the end of this year on the 31st of this month. They extended it 1 month into January. And I see that that's probably going to get extended again because
just can't have these people in
yeah,
the street.
and it's really a balancing act, as you say, David Winker. It is a balancing act in that, you've got on the one side people that just can't afford to pay their rent, whether it's rent or mortgage, whatever. On the other hand, in some cases, think about that small business owner that owns that building that maybe has, that has not getting his rent
and has a mortgage to pay
or
expenses or whatever.
Exactly.
Hey, Andy, you got a comment up there. I think we need to address it because
Tommy is fact checking. So Carol,
no, but yeah, just go ahead. You can read it, David.
Carol,
but I have to clarify it because it's completely false.
We have our fact checker on. Carol's comment is people collecting unemployment are getting more than if they were getting their paycheck. Don't forget that. People that are working are getting the same or less than before the pandemic.
Okay, so if you're making $225 a week on unemployment and your check was less than that, you were not employed. Number one. Number two.
Well, let
me clarify this. Because in the beginning, it was $600 plus it was $275 back then.
$275.
So now you're talking about $875. But if you're a bartender, black market in downtown Miami, you're making $1,500 a week. So you're still making less money on the unemployment and you got no job. So that's not entirely true. Now, the person that was working in fast food, they never got laid off. They still kept doing food as drive-through and whatever. That never stopped. But the little cafes and little tiny places, restaurants, now that a lot of them have closed, they were laid off. They were not making $875 a week.
Right.
They were maybe making $500 or $600 a week. So they made a couple extra $100 until that ran out. That's gone now. Gone.
Well, the other side of it too is that getting state unemployment in Florida is nearly impossible. I mean, let's be honest. The system was set up in a way to make it really, really difficult for people to get unemployment because when Governor Scott was in office, he wanted the unemployment numbers to look low.
Let's point out that Governor Scott voted against this COVID relief bill.
Yes.
He's one of 6 Republicans that did not vote for it.
Correct. But her point, Carol's point, to be devil's advocate and
what she says, she responded, it's not entirely false. Not everyone is stamped out of the same cookie cutter. Also, people on unemployment are working on the side.
That's a felony.
I don't know how true that is. That's a blanket statement. But one thing that Carol is saying, which there's some truth to, is the fact that there were certain people collecting unemployment that were making more, and I could give you a good example of that, making more with the national and the state unemployment than they were making working. And so when work became available, and I'll give you a great example of that. I'm in the vacation rental business. We have housekeepers.
You're not a lobbyist.
No, I'm not. Far from it. Okay. But there are housekeepers at one of the hotels that we're at, not ours, but that work for the hotel component of that at that location, that they couldn't get back to work because they were making in excess of what they made as housekeepers. Now, it makes me wonder, are we paying people enough? That's why we just voted for a $15 an hour minimum wage in the state of Florida, but a mere 6 weeks ago in the November 3rd election. So, you wonder about it. But again, it's the people that are unemployed that need the money more than the people that are employed. My daughter, I talked to her last night. She works for a large marketing firm here in South Florida. My daughter, Casey, she just got a promotion and a raise. She's going to get a $600 check. She has no business getting that $600 check. And I told her you should donate that money to a charity. I told her.
Telling her what to do with her
money. I told her. I said you should donate it to a charity. Donate it to Camilla's house, to some place that needs it. Go out and buy food and give it to people there are people that don't have money to eat during this holiday season, that are unemployed, that have this is going to continue for months and months and months and have no way of bringing in money. And so I think those are the people that we really need to focus on and be concerned with.
It's interesting. Let me jump on this.
Sure.
It's interesting to Carol's point. I appreciate Carol weighing in on this, and it is. I think this is the inefficiency of government, right? I mean, this is when the government is so ill-equipped to figure this out, like we all know people that have been hustling through this. And I know people who, when they were getting the full unemployment, I was like, are you going back to work? Is the restaurant open? Yeah, it's open, but I'm not going back. Why not? I'm going to wait until my benefits run out. And that is the truth. There's other people who are in desperate need of this. So I don't, and the government's just not good at figuring that out, right? The government's very inefficient in figuring out the best use of the money. So I don't know. It's going to be, we're going to talk about the Georgia race, and I think that this may decide the Georgia race. I think people are pissed.
You think?
Well, I think people are pissed that they're $600. I mean,
before we go into that, we will in a second. The only other thing I'd like to mention is the one thing I liked in this relief bill was the fact that money was put aside specifically for rental assistance, and that's $25 billion. And finally, they identified the fact that, and I assume, I don't know the exact particulars of that, but I assume that rental assistance is for not only people that can't pay their rent, but the people that are not receiving those rent payments, as we mentioned, that own maybe investment properties that have a mortgage to pay, that have expenses to pay on those properties that they own, that people are living in and not paying rent because they can't afford to, and to address just one thing you said, David Winker, it is like any tragedy in America. There are always winners and losers. Always. You'll note when I remember one of my first jobs in radio was with Paxson Broadcasting, my second job in radio. And I worked at WINZ during Hurricane Andrew. And people were suffering. That hurricane came through. We know the story, how it demolished the South, especially the south part of Miami-Dade County. Yet there were people that were affected by this, their lives completely altered. But there were some big winners in that too. People that made lots and lots of money providing various services that were needed at that time after the hurricane. So there's always winners and losers in this. We got to focus on the people that need the help and not the people that take advantage of the situation, I think. But continue. Let's talk about a little bit about Georgia.
What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think a couple things. I think, look, we have our Cuban coffee here.
Come on in the camera here.
Come over here. No, come over here. Look at that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And what is your first name again?
Denise.
Denise is by far the most important person here at Miami Community
Denise
News.
Is so awesome.
Bar none. Because this is what she brings in the morning. And as you can tell by the start time of this show today, I need this really, really
Denise,
badly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise.
We love you.
Have a great day. So first thing about the Georgia race that comes to mind with me, and a lot of people out there are going to disagree with me, probably, because everyone does. But I think that the challenging of the presidential election by President Trump is going to hurt the Republican candidates in Georgia. I think it motivates people on the other side to get out and vote. I think it has the opposite effect of maybe what they think might have been the effect, which is get all the Republicans out to vote. I think Stacey Abrams in Georgia has done an amazing job. She is really the reason why I believe that Biden won the state of Georgia the way he did. It was unbelievable. I never thought in my wildest imagination that the Democrats and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would win Georgia the way they did. But the sheer fact that they did tells me that there is possibility with both of these Democratic candidates in Georgia. And I see it as a super tight election. Early voting has started in Georgia already. And in the next few weeks, we're going to find out who's the two U.S. senators in the state. And it could really change the balance of power, obviously, in the U.S. Senate.
It is amazing to think about what impact this will have, because if the Democrats have control of the House and the Senate, like, we could really see a transformative thing take place. It's funny. It's like one of these tipping points where it's like either nothing is going to happen because there's going to be pure gridlock, and they're going to do everything they can the Republicans are going to do everything they can to stymie Biden and make sure he accomplishes nothing, right? Just make
like they did with Obama.
Yeah, just fight him every step of the way on every issue, or the Democrats are just going to implement their whole agenda. It's so crazy. I can't remember a point where it just came down to these two races. And if they split the races, the Republicans maintain control.
They maintain control.
So they got to win both. And I think
but you know what? Do you really believe, and maybe you're right, I don't know that I'm correct in this assumption, but if it's that close, I mean, look at how close the House is now. If it's that close in the Senate, and all it takes is 1 or 2 or 3 votes one way or the other on a bill to shift the balance, don't you think that they might be able to accomplish that? Or do you think they're so entrenched on each side that you're not going to see movement from anybody? Because that really does pain me to say that. I think that at the end of the day, those yahoos up in Washington should be worried about us and not about their parties.
I think it's interesting because I've always said, like, one of the best kept secrets of America is, like, we like when there's gridlock in DC normally, because that's just like the government stays out of our business. We do our business. We conduct what we're doing. That's not the situation now, right? We need help. We need help to get the economy, wherever you are politically on the spectrum. We need the government's help to finish this pandemic off, get everyone vaccinated, and get the economy going. And so with a dysfunctional federal government, that's going to be difficult to do, which is what we've seen, right? I mean, I think one of the reasons, I think most people would agree, one of the reasons we're in the mess we're in is we didn't have federal leadership on this issue, right? We could have been more effective in how we tackled this. Like I just saw, for example, but anyways, so so we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting to see. Again, the way that I view it, Andy, is I think come June, come August, this economy is going to start ripping again. And I think we're just pent up demand. I mean, I don't know about you, but like, we can't wait to travel. We can't wait to go to restaurants. Yeah. We can't wait to go to football games, baseball games. Like, we can't wait. My family is dying to get out and do stuff. So I think you're going to see people really like take off on the.
Well, but I think it's a balancing act, David. I think that, there's certain people like you and I who are affected maybe less by this pandemic, that have that pent up, that are pent up and that want to go to restaurants and travel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a lot of people that don't have any money.
But they're going to go to work. That's my point. When those restaurants open up, right? Like we've started now on Friday night, we go to Flanagan's and get our takeout dinner. My daughter loves Flanagan's, so we do it. And it's like, you go and that place is just at partial capacity, right?
Yes.
And like, it is packed on that partial capacity. I mean, the takeout, you call sometimes, they're like, we can't take your order, we're maxed out. Like I just think that like there's just one, it's an organic thing. It's like, once you start working, once people are going, once you go to the hotel, they got to hire the bellboys, like, they got to hire the maids. Like, I feel like the whole thing is going to crank back up pretty quickly. At least that's what I hope. And I was talking to this managing director of one of the accounting firms, and he felt very much the same way. The problem is, I think there's more kind of these seismic shifts in the economy, which is more big box, right? We're all ordering Amazon. I mean, I don't know about you. I did all my shopping for the first time, everything on Amazon. Like, I still was old school. I'd go to the store.
Yeah, now I'm going to the store.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Good for you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I am. I'm so tired of Amazon. I don't even want to get started with that. But I just want to read a comment from George Gonzalez, Andy, talking about my daughter. Let her choose what to do to spend her $600.
Exactly.
Cut the cord. But he brings this up. He says, which is a great thing. What do you think about getting only $10 million for helping the Bay? That's less than a waterfront property value. We have a big problem with Biscayne Bay, and it could really affect our home values here. The Bay is getting polluted, and it's getting compromised, and that is a big economic driver for our community. What do you think about a resolution to that? I think the state and the county and the federal government really needs to, put money into, curing this problem we have with Biscayne Bay.
It's an interesting problem because the two, what are our two main industries? Development and tourism, right? And they go hand in hand. So is the development harming the bay? And you see Raquel Regalado really pushing this thing with septic tanks, for example, and this incredible investment. And it's funny because some people have been making fun of her for pushing the septic tank thing.
But what is she's pushing? What removal of septic tanks? Get sewers everywhere.
Get rid of that leaching that's happening.
Right.
And it's interesting because I have a personal experience with that because in the Keys, I have a house in the Keys, and we did it. And I mean, it's just anecdotal, but like my canal went from being, it was the color of my jacket. It was black. And it really changed as soon as, 6 months after we had changed over, it really changed. The color got clear, again, anecdotal. But I bring up Raquel in that thing because that's I would say a pro-development candidate saying we have to protect. She believes that it's affecting the bay and our water quality. So it's so I think that we really have to focus on it. So is this going to be a cure-all? No, of course not. But I think people's attention is changing. That fish kill affect people. We're big boaters and we saw it, and it's ugly and it's horrible and it's concerning. So we'll see what happens. But it goes back up to Big Sugar. I mean, there's so much going on with that decision about are we going to put the economy first? And it's like I've always said, it's just like corruption in this town. It's not going to change until the developers feel it. The developers, I think, felt the problem with Biscayne Bay. No one wants that national media. No one likes, Key Biscayne Beach closed because of fecal matter. That stuff sucks for us. So,
well, speaking of developers, I want to throw this at you. It's comical to me. Okay. We're sitting here in South Miami right now, right? Let's call this the epicenter for we don't want development at all. All right. All along Metro Rail line, you see development in Coral Gables and the city of Miami, where development should be. No, let's not keep pushing the UBD boundary farther west and develop into the Everglades. How about let's filling in the areas, especially around mass transit, where we can have development. But the city commission here in South Miami for a long period of time kept putting off what was inevitable for Sunset Place, and that was a development there. That type of retail does not work, and the businesses long before COVID in the downtown area of South Miami have been suffering for years now, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. They've been suffering. Their businesses slowly declined as Dadeland has developed smartly in areas outside of single family home residential, around their Metro Rail, around where people can get out of their apartments and walk to their entertainment, walk to their shopping. The same thing with Coral Gables, the same thing with the city of Miami, etc. They haven't done it here. So for years and years, finally, they propose and agree to a development of Sunset Place. But it was too late, apparently, because the developer, Federal Realty, declares bankruptcy on the property. Okay. It's in receivership now. They hand it back to the bank. So now a new player comes in, a new developer. I'm not going to mention any names. And he's going around the city of South Miami proposing now, listen to this, the development that was approved by that commission was 3 towers, one 18-story, two 16-story towers on that 11.5-acre property, which is now Sunset Place. The new supposed guy who's going to buy it now and develop it is going around town asking for a 44-story building on that property.
Wow.
Okay. And this goes back to, hey, be reasonable in how you, as a developer, in my opinion, on what you ask for. I mean, that's just being, excuse my language, a friggin' pig. Okay. And you deal with developers all the time. I mean, I guess it's their job is to get as much as they possibly can.
It's their fiduciary duty to do it. I got to tell you something. I have not heard about that. That would be amazing. I mean, there's nothing.
It's not going to it has nothing, a snowball's hell. That has more. Look, I have a better chance of becoming an NBA starting guard for the Miami Heat than that guy has to
I
get a
love
44-story
the
building.
audacity, though. I love the audacity, and I would love to see the South Miami, the city of South Miami, deal with that application. 40. What's the tallest building in South Miami?
8 stories.
8 stories in the entire city.
I mean, crazy, right? but here again, now they put themselves in a position to have to start dealing with this all over again because they couldn't approve a project 3-4 years ago when they should have approved it. If they had done it then, they would have most of that project developed, people living in their downtown area, and people shopping and frequenting their restaurants and so forth in South Miami.
I gotta say to Tommy, you got to fact check me on this. Does he get more passionate? Does Andy Korge get more passionate about talking about anything more than he does South Miami politics?
Yeah, no.
No, fact check.
Right.
Well, because it's the most dysfunctional politics I've ever seen, ever in my life.
All right, we got to shift gears. We got to talk
Okay.
some football.
Let's do it.
Andy, you got me depressed. I don't know what weighs up now after talking with
Well,
you.
the bowl season started yesterday. Let's talk college football. The bowl season started yesterday with the Myrtle Beach Bowl, Appalachian State versus North Texas. And it continues today with 2 bowl games. One, our very own UCF, University of Central Florida, plays this evening at 7 p.m. against BYU, which should be a great
It's a
game.
great game. You know, I looked up tickets for that. Do you want to guess what the cheapest ticket was?
Free.
$125.
Really?
Because I think it's limited seating. Every Mormon in South Florida is going to be there.
I assume the Boca Raton Bowl is in Boca Raton.
It's at the
FAU?
beautiful FAU stadium. I love watching. I've been to a lot of Boca Bowls. Remember when we used to have the Miami Beach Bowl that was at Marlin Stadium?
Yes.
I always made a point of going to those.
Really?
It would be like, it was like a Tuesday afternoon, like at 2:00. I would always go. It's just like that was like Christmas to me. They got rid of that bowl. But yeah, so that's the that's I got to tell you something. That's going to be a great game. What's the other game we have tonight?
Tonight, Nevada Tulane, the degenerate gambler over here.
30.
Right.
Yep.
Our degenerate gambler, Tommy, somehow bets on a game.
So those are today's games. Tell me, what did you think about the playoff, the 4-team playoff?
Well, first, before we talk about that, I want to say yesterday during my radio show here at Miami Community News, it's also on Onside Radio with Brett Romberg. We talked about being in the Cheez-It Bowl, the Cheez-It Bowl.
All the Cheez-Its you can eat.
I mean, I don't know. It's like, when is Miami going to turn the corner and not be in bowls like the Cheez-It Bowl?
And they're going to lose the Cheez-It Bowl if past history is any indication.
I mean, they're just getting romped in these things. But
against Oklahoma State, and I got to tell you, our prognosticator, Tommy, in our Christmas betting show, the prognosticator said Oklahoma State's going to win that game.
Yeah, and he's probably right, our prognosticator over there. But it's the thing with Miami now is, are our expectations just ridiculous for the University of Miami? I was saying to Brett Romberg yesterday during our show that the problem that he has is that his expectations are so high that can a team even meet that? Is it even possible? But then we look at it at a program like Alabama and they keep doing it, or like Clemson, they keep doing it. And I think it comes down to coaching.
But also I think the problem is just like, if we just close the barn door on our recruits in South Florida, which is what built those early teams, right?
Yes.
They said, like, we're all going to go to Miami. I mean, you watch the U. I mean, you heard those conversations. You heard those athletes say, we just had a conversation. It's like, yeah, we could go play somewhere else. Let's stay home.
Right.
Let's go win a national championship. And if you get that back, now, what does it take to get there, right? Because it seems like, whenever I think about what's happening in college football, our 5 stars, our 4 stars, where do they go? Clemson, Alabama, Texas A&M. I mean, watch out for Texas A&M. They're picking off our best defensive players. So like you're seeing that. So I think the idea is that hope springs eternal because the kids are here, right? The kids are in the backyard and we're letting them slip away. I mean, every time I see a kid go to Oregon, I mean, Oregon's great. I mean, it's a great place to go to school. I understand why you go away, but you got to get frustrated, right? Like, why can't we not convince that kid to go to Coral Gables?
Yeah. I mean, maybe it is the recruiting at the end of the day. And we have Julie Cooper saying, Leo, I'm unsure, I guess maybe Father Leo says it's recruiting. Maybe it is, but let me point something out. It was an interesting conversation on Thursday. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, on Thursday of last week, the day after the recruiting started, that Brett and I had during Romberg and Korge, was that, Jimmy Johnson never had a great recruiting class at the University of Miami. Dennis Erickson I don't think ever had lower than supposedly a seventh recruiting class. And I think it comes down to those guys, how astute they are. Jerome Brown, Hall of Fame tackle, was recruited by, I think, Valdosta State and the University of Miami. And he's in the NFL Hall of Fame. Same for Warren Sapp. He was not a highly recruited NFL Hall of Fame player. So, you wonder, I put very little into that, because I think it goes down to being able to eye certain things with players that you see them developing into the future. And then, of course, coaching them up once they get to the U. And I'm not convinced that the coaching up part is solved at the University of Miami. What's your thought on that?
No, I agree. And I mean that anyone that watched that North Carolina game had to come away depressed. Like, what is the state of the program? How could something like that happen? What positives do you build on from a game like that? That's a team that lost to Florida State, and they come in and they beat Miami every aspect of the game. They just crushed Miami. And it's like, it's one of those things we always talk about. It's like, how many of those kids could even make the university? How many of those Tar Heels could even make the University of Miami football team?
Well,
let alone start.
Well, they look like they had some talented players, but I agree with you. The beatdown was beyond belief. Okay. The safeties coming up and just getting juked every time. I mean, that's like stuff you learn, in Pee Wee football, And so it was jarring what occurred. But to get back to your question a moment ago regarding the Final Four, I cannot believe that Notre Dame is in the Final Four. It is ridiculous. They got hammered by Clemson in the ACC championship game. Yeah, granted, they beat Clemson in double, triple overtime with Clemson's backup quarterback early in the season, but they got hammered by Clemson, and Trevor Lawrence just put a hurting on them in every way, shape, or form. They have no business.
When you watch that game, it's like they played a dozen times. Clemson blows them out a dozen times.
For sure.
That's what was interesting about that pick that they got in there.
Yeah, I for sure. I mean, I thought Texas A&M really deserved a shot. They lost one game early in the season,
but they got crushed by Alabama. See, that's the same problem. It's like someone summed it up best. It's like who had the least embarrassing loss? Whose embarrassing loss was the least embarrassing? Because they got crushed by Alabama. Now, I think the thing is, it was earlier in the season. See, that's part of it.
Very early,
I mean,
right?
You hate to reward early losses that way, but it's like just to have Clemson crush Notre Dame, and let's do it again.
Well, and Texas A&M beat some highly ranked teams. The SEC, their schedule was all SEC games this year, which we all acknowledge probably the toughest conference in college football. So, you wonder, how did Texas A&M not make it to that Final Four? To me, it seemed logical. Look, you didn't win your play-in game, Notre Dame. You're relegated. Yeah. So that let's turn to one other.
Before you leave,
go ahead.
Because I was saying I have a solution for this, and I it's like this is the kind of creative thinking we don't see. I was thinking, why don't we have a play-in game? Like, I think it would have been cool to have two games to play into the final. Just say it's too close. We can't decide. We're going to let
have Texas A&M and Notre Dame play each other.
Cincinnati play Texas A&M.
Right.
Have Notre Dame play. Have the play. I think it would have been really creative. Say Christmas Day, we're going to meet in Dallas. We're going to have this game and do it. I mean, I think there's ways to deal with this. I think there's going to be backlash. I think we're going to see Alabama, Clemson again.
Definitely.
Which is a good final, but I mean, I think people wanted to see Cincinnati, right? And it's like, I think that you got to incentivize these teams to play these schedules And this idea of just having these same teams every year is not exciting for people. Like,
Yeah,
I'd like to see
a little change.
Well, I'd just like to see Cincinnati.
So do you think the answer to that is a 8-team playoff?
And everyone says the problem with that is then all of a sudden, let's say you do 6. Then what do you end up with? Who's the 7th and 8th? But I think if you look back on it, it really is not a lot of controversy. Right now, the controversy really is it's 6. A&M, Cincinnati. That's what we all want to see. I think Cincinnati earned a spot.
Well, as one Kevin Korge, the same last name, says, Notre Dame is overrated every year. Put them in a damn conference already. And you know what? There's some truth to that.
Well, they were in ACC.
They were this year, but
and they didn't win the ACC.
Right. And they didn't win it. Right?
Right.
So why are they in the Final Four? I have no idea. Okay, sure. So let's talk about this. I cannot figure NFL. We have the Dolphins look great, but I'm having a hard time figuring out what the rules are in the NFL. And we're going to show a play from last night, the Steelers versus the Bengals last night.
The Bengals defense looked like the Iron Curtain last night. It was unbelievable.
They did, but let's show this play, and I would just want to discuss it for a minute. We're going to finish up.
One of the most amazing hits we've seen in a long time.
There's some pressure from the Bengals. Roethlisberger, Juju Smith-Schuster is blown up, and the whistles blow.
Okay, there we go.
Such an accurate call. Blown up.
You could get rid of that, Tommy.
Blown up is a good description for that hit.
But I'm trying to figure out what's a legal hit in the NFL and what's a non-legal hit in the NFL. I mean, I have no idea. That looked like targeting to me. They call it targeting now.
It was helmet to helmet, like almost like crown of the helmet. I think that's the other thing too when you look at it. It's crown of the helmet to the face, right? Hit him right in the face mask. You see his head just snap back. It seems like exactly the type of hit we don't want to encourage in the NFL. On the other hand, and it was a question of whether he was defenseless, right? He caught the ball. He takes like one step and he gets blown up. But what was interesting is I didn't hear the announcers. I think part of the problem was everyone was so happy to see Juju get blown up after his like TikTok dances on the emblem at center field and stuff. So there was little sympathy for him.
Right.
But yeah, I'm with you. Like, it's like I can't tell you what's a legal catch anymore. I can't tell you what the tuck rule is. I mean, just the other day in the Dolphins game, there was that weird play where Cam Newton fumbled the ball and the Dolphins ran it back for a touchdown. And the rule was that one of the Dolphins players' foot was out of bounds and the ball was fumbled forward. That's the word he used. It was fumbled forward and it hit the out of bounds Dolphins player. So I guess it was dead. I mean, how much football have I watched in 40 years, 45 years of watching football? I didn't know that rule.
Yeah, it's getting a little convoluted, but I am excited about our Dolphins. Oh. I want to say last night we had during Romberg and Korge, we had this nice young lady. She's a singer in South Florida, and she doesn't know much about football. We had picked 5 games from this weekend, and I did it to emphasize a point. Every single expert, quote unquote expert, on Sunday before the games on ESPN and on CBS predicted the Patriots to beat not one, but every single one of them. And I think there is no expert in the sport. I think any sport is so unpredictable that there are no real experts.
And I think it's interesting. Well, I mean, first of all, I would say our prognosticator got it right.
Yeah. Okay.
Tommy got it right.
Yes.
Tommy, broken leg Stitt got it right.
Yeah, it's like this. Okay. I got it right.
But the thing is, Dan Le Batard always says that, he always starts this analysis like, what do we know to be true? And I think that one of the things you can say about the Dolphins is, what do we know to be true about the Dolphins? They have a kick butt defense. That's all we know. We don't know our quarterback play.
Well, it starts there. It starts there.
But the point is like, you almost have to like just pick out things that it's like the Pittsburgh losing last night just in this terrible defeat to the 2-win Bengals. I was talking to my daughter about it, 7-year-old, explaining like, this is so crazy what you're seeing here. Like, this is why you play the games. Like, on paper, this never should have happened. And these Bengals showed up to play. Pittsburgh didn't.
Right.
Pittsburgh came close to pulling it out. Let's not, Pittsburgh, ground through it and like tried to figure it out. They showed a lot of heart to me, but it's like, what do we know to be true about Pittsburgh? Not a lot. They didn't.
Well, that certainly is one stock that's tanking right now, known as the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're right. But listen, the Dolphins, there's two things we do know about the Dolphins. They have a good defense and they got great coaching. That's becoming self-evident. When you have third string players and your wide receivers, tight ends, running backs perform the way they do with a rookie quarterback, I mean, there's only one explanation for that, and that is great coaching. And we should all, if we're Dolphin fans, we should all be incredibly excited on the future of this team with 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, a first and a second coming from Houston that could be a top 5 pick in both rounds. Yeah. So, I mean, nothing but sky's the limit. We're going to have a great run with the Miami Dolphins.
I am so excited with the Dolphins. And I watch it at Miami Yacht Club. Everyone should come out. It's a great place to watch the game. Open air terrace, both TVs going, volume on, watching the games. And there's a group of our kids sail. And so they're there. And it's actually like a bunch of sailing moms that are big Dolphins fans. And I was talking to one of the moms the other day after the loss to Kansas City. And I looked at her and I said, we looked at each other. I was like, I'm not upset. I'm not upset we lost this game. And I said to her, there's no moral victories in football. But that was a moral victory.
Yes.
Like I really was.
So let me ask you, when you go to
so excited.
When you go to the yacht club sitting next to you watching these games, is it Thurston Howell III and Lovey?
No. Anyone who's been to Miami Yacht Club knows it's the least yacht club in the world.
Christened the Flying Wasp.
Exactly, the Flying Wasp. There you go.
Tommy comes and watches football games with me over there. Okay?
There you go. Well, as we end, I just want to point out Rhea Del Mar, who was with Romberg and I last night, predicted the Titans to win this week in this Sunday.
What do we know to be true? Tannehill looks like he's actually a pretty good quarterback.
No, but she picked – here was a rationale. She picked the Titans because she loves Denzel Washington, and remember the Titans were one of her favorite movies. She picked the Seahawks over the Rams because she loves birds. Birds are her favorite animal. Which one else did she pick? She picked the Colts. Yeah. Yeah, she picked the Bills because she likes money.
She likes dollar bills.
And she picked the Colts because when she was a young girl cheerleading for 14 years, the team she cheerleaded for were called the Colts. It was all predicate. And then she picked the Dolphins because that's her home team. So those were the 5. And I'll bet you she beats Romberg and I in terms of her picks.
Yeah, and that's what I do with my 7-year-old.
And we're experts.
I do my 7-year-olds like, who's going to win? A Raider or a dolphin, and she'd be like, "What's a raider?" It's like a pirate. Oh, the dolphin. Dolphin's gonna beat a raider.
Yeah. The dolphin can beat the pirate when it falls in the water, right?
Exactly.
I mean, so that's what it's all about. There are no experts. Well, listen, I've enjoyed. Thank you, David Winker, for coming in this morning.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Miami. Have a safe week. Merry Christmas.
And I want to just
holidays.
And I want to thank Julie Cooper, Kevin Korge, George Gonzalez.
Kevin Korge, no relationship.
No relation. What? Max Martin, my good friend Max Martin. Naomi Evans. George Gonzalez, as I mentioned. We had some great guests, people watching in and commenting. George thinks I'm drinking too much Cuban coffee or something. Maybe I'll be speaking Spanish soon, George, if I keep drinking that Cuban coffee, as you point out. But I want to thank you all for watching, and I want to thank you for watching and participating. We love your comments when we broadcast these shows here at Miami Community News. Tomorrow, I want to point out, I have a special guest, special guest. You're going to have to tune in here. The jolly old man himself, St. Nick, Santa Claus, will be here live on the Andy Korge Show at Miami Community News.
Can't beat that.
He rarely does shows, but he will be here. If you have kids, you really need to have
this is not gonna traumatize our children.
No, it will not. This is gonna be something special. Your kids will want to see this.
Not a drunk Santa.
Not drunk, not a perverted Santa, nothing like that. No, none of that. Not a Billy Bob Thornton Santa.
All right.
Nothing like
I
that.
trust you, Andy. I'll have my 7-year-old.
You got to have her on. It's the real Santa Claus. St. Nick himself will be here on the Andy Korge Show at Miami Community News. Thanks for joining us today at the hub of local news and information in South Florida, Miami Community News. You have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow on the Andy Korge Show.